Okay, we're going live. Stand by. Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ruda. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 330A, subsection 18, this meeting of the Dudley Board of Selectmen will be conducted in total or in part via remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at dudleyma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: by YouTube and/or posted link at www.dudleyma.gov. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
before we get started, on behalf of the board, I'd like to send out condolences to Deb Thibodeau, our town accountant, MIS director, which probably doesn't encapsulate all the work she does, but recently lost her mother. And I'm sure I speak from behalf of the board and everybody present in the town to send our sympathies to Deb Thibodeau and her family.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
First up on the agenda, we have the consent agenda, acceptance of minutes of 1/25/21.
So
Mr.
moved.
Chairman. Okay.
Yes,
Second.
Mr. Marcy. Oh,
I was going to
second.
move second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
John Marcy, aye.
Dave Johnson, aye.
Gary Siganovich, unanimous, 4-0. Mr. Joseph is not with us today. Next up, we have the town administrator's report. Mr. Ruda.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to be discussing a grant tonight. We're going to be discussing a recommendation from the Personnel Board, and the Highway Superintendent's going to give a brief presentation. So in the interest in time, these are the things I would normally cover in my report. So I asked the board to allow me to waive my report for tonight so we can proceed.
Everyone good with that?
Agreed.
Excellent. Next up, under new business, vote to accept draft proposed grade plan, characteristic chart, and market equity pay band. Proposal is recommended by the Personnel Board and consultant, or take any other action, relative action thereto. Is anyone here to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'll start. Does everyone have a copy of those two documents in front of them? If not, I'm going to try to put them up on the screen right now. Start with this one, I guess. I'm going to be asking the board to approve something that the Personnel Board has approved. I'm going to ask Lorna to speak on it. I'm going to just go over quickly what I'm going to be asking for. This stems back to our the grant that we received to do a salary survey and salary and compensation survey and report from Don Jacobs Associates. And the first item that we have ready to go, this has been a year-long process, and I apologize for the length of it. As you know, it was kind of curtailed for a while on some other unforeseen circumstances, but the first thing that I sent over to personnel was with Don was the characteristic chart. The characteristic chart assigns 6 grade levels based upon the characteristics of each position. For example, grade level 1 shows the characteristics of a role that would be rated as grade 1. Grade 2, the same thing, 3, 4, it goes all the way up to 6. An example of a grade level 1 position might be a part-time custodian, or an assistant custodian. It goes all the way up to grade 6, which would be town administrator. So the point that what I'm going to ask for the board to do tonight is to accept this as the town's characteristic chart to assign grade levels for the purposes of pay. The second document, and I'm going to go to Lorna in a second. I just kind of want to go over it real quickly. Second document would be a pay structure that goes along with those grades. If you look up and see in the first, in column B and C, you have a higher pay band, which is what we currently pay for positions that have the same characteristics of the grades in the characteristic chart that I just displayed. For example, right now, if you are performing a function at what we consider to be a grade 1, according to that characteristic chart, we are right now hiring around 1523 with a max in that level at 1714 per hour. Based on the market study that was conducted, based on characteristics rather than position titles, we have that market equity pay band. The benchmark would be the middle of the pay band. So those are our two starting points. Without assigning any changes in the pay of current employees or proposing a plan to bring people up to equitable market rate, I think this would be this is the appropriate place for us to start, for us to move forward to propose a plan as to how we actually pay people. So, Mr. Chairman, if we go to Lorna Wade, who's the chair of the Personnel Board, she could maybe give us a recommendation and share her thoughts on it.
Certainly.
Good evening. We met with Mr. Jacobs several times over from last summer through a couple of weeks ago. He very competently explained the principles he used to develop all the 3 documents and the philosophy that he used behind it. He answered all of our questions, and the board voted unanimously to accept the documents that were presented by Mr. Jacobs for your consideration. It was a 3 votes for aye, no, there were no nays. So we think this is a good starting point to begin to look at how we view people in the town and how we compensate them and how we look at trying to make things justifiable or equitable in the future when to move forward. So that that is our recommendation.
Thank you very much. Do you have anything else on this, Mr. Ruda? Or are we good? Do the board members have any questions about this?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I believe this is a pretty straightforward system that would enable some clear paths for development and for standardization of pay in the town. It makes sense to me. You know, obviously the research on the dollar amounts was done and not by us, obviously, but it looks to be fair.
Chairman will entertain a motion if anyone so chooses. Mr. Marcy.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was great, Bill and the Personnel Board, thank you guys for really taking a look at that. I know that we've wanted to have something in place to point to show people that, we actually do have standards and grades, for certain job descriptions or all job descriptions. I think this is a good step forward. And it shows people like, as we start, get some people that need to be closer to market rate, we'll know exactly, what we need to plan for during budgeting. So I think this is great. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept this report.
Second.
You want to
You're
unmute?
muted, Mr. Chairman.
I'm still, am I muted now? No, I am not. Roll call vote.
John Marcy, aye.
Jay Johnson, I.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
Carrie Siganovich, aye, unanimous.
Thank you
Next
very
on
much.
the,
Thank you, Lorna.
Thanks,
yes,
Laura.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda, we have the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, Jericho Brandon Infrastructure Plan presentation. Who will be speaking to that?
Mr. Chairman, this is a continuation of the second half of a presentation, a public presentation that we gave about a month ago or so. And the work is done based on a grant that Bill and I worked on with Andrew Lowe from CMRPC to study two specific qualifying areas of town. That's the area of Jericho and the area of Brandon Road. So without further ado, I'll mess up the presentation. We are going to.
Mr. Ruda, I think I can kick it off and then hand it over
Okay,
to the team from Ty and Bond, if you don't mind.
thank you.
All right, thanks. So I'm Andrew Lowe from the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission, or CMRPC. CMRPC, as most of you know, is the state designated regional planning agency serving Dudley and 39 other cities and towns in the southern part of Worcester County. The Jericho and Brandon Neighborhood Infrastructure Plan is part of a community development block grant awarded to the town by the Mass Department of Housing and Community Development a little more than a year ago. And CMRPC serves as the grant and project manager on the town's behalf. As Mr. Ruda alluded, tonight's presentation is the second of two public events for this project, following a public forum we held at the end of October last year to present some initial findings. The infrastructure plan was begun by the town in recognition of longstanding infrastructure needs in the Jericho neighborhood and the nearby Brandon Road area. These areas were mostly built from the late 1800s into the 1950s and have some of the oldest water, sewer, stormwater drainage, road, and sidewalk infrastructure in Dudley. While it's generally functional and safe, these utilities are showing their age and will require improvements going forward. The plan has a number of goals and benefits, and I'll highlight just a couple of them here. So through field survey and document research, it comprehensively identifies existing infrastructure in need of upgrade or replacement within the target area. It lays out a roadmap for specific achievable improvements to address the main problems identified, and it proposes several specific projects structured to leverage various state and federal grant and loan programs to fund design and construction of future improvements to minimize the need for local funding in most cases. The infrastructure plan has been under development since last spring by a consulting team from Ty and Bond Engineers, working closely with staff in Dudley's Water and Sewer Department, Highway Department, Planning Department, among others. For their contributions to the plan, I quickly want to recognize George Petrinos, who I believe is here tonight, and Mike Krychek from the Water and Sewer Department, Jeff Murray, Stan Galensky, and Vinny Paletta from Highway, and Bill Scanlon from Planning. For those folks at home who are interested in the presentation tonight, the slides are available on the town's website, www.dudleyma.gov. And the draft plan itself will be available on the town's website in the next week or so, and public comments and questions will be accepted via email for some time thereafter. And with that, I'll hand things off to Matt Zorik and Liz Desjardins of Ty and Bond, who will take us through the key points of the plan's findings and recommendations. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everybody. I am Matt Zorik. I'm from Ty and Bond. With me, I have Liz Desjardins, and together we'll go through what we have in the master plan so far. I guess one question, Liz, do you have control?
I do.
Okay, perfect. All right, so the agenda for tonight, go through quickly, what the project area is, what the infrastructure evaluation kind of found for the findings, what did we do, how did we do it, and then that will kind of lead into, what priority projects we identified from the infrastructure assessment, and then hopefully at the end we have some time for some comments and questions. So first, the study area. To the north, at the top of the page there, highlighted in green, that is the Jericho study area. Basically Village, Mill Street, up to Pine Street, over to Oxford Ave, that area in between. And then to the south is the Brandon study area, basically south of West Main Street, east of Schofield Ave, down to Fairview. So those are the two areas that we primarily focused on as part of this study. And that was partly due to what Andrew was saying, to grant funding and limitations of what we could handle in terms of the geography of the project. So to start, and again, we did present some of this stuff to the public, I think it was in October, so I'm not going to go too much in depth, but I want to make sure everyone at least understands, what we did and what our findings were. We do have a bunch of appendices at the end of this presentation to go over all of our figures if there are specific questions. But I tried to summarize most of it here and get into the priority projects, which Liz will get into. But so to start, first thing we did was generate a base plan. So an aerial survey was conducted that was supplemented with a ground survey, and that was from June to August of 2020. Record drawings were reviewed, basically whatever the town provided, or what we could dig up, we compiled that information, and we generated 40 scale base mapping drawings. In terms of data collection itself, so besides the ground survey and all this record reviews, we actually performed field investigations. We went into the field, we walked every street, inventoried all the infrastructure, we popped manhole covers, did limited CCTV work. So there's a big component of field work as well, in addition to the records review that was used to generate these field base map, or these base map drawings. As part of our assessment, as I said, we did the field studies, but we did it to the DHCD rating systems, generally ranked as excellent, good, fair, poor. And we presented these findings to the town on a public meeting in October of 2020. All right, so what did we look at? The focus of this was pavement surfaces, curbing, sidewalks, accessibility that goes along with sidewalks, ramps, crosswalks, then subsurface utilities, drainage, sewer, and water. This is a sample rating sheet. So for every street that we looked at, there was a rating sheet like this put together. It has the street, the relative age of the utilities on it. And then it actually has info on the condition of, the pavement, the water, the sewer, existing sidewalks. And so to document, all the infrastructure in the study area that we had. So, again, I don't have all these in this presentation, but this is kind of just a general example of how the data was collected, and that was put into like a, Excel spreadsheet that's in the master plan report. These are the summary tables. So based on all of those data collection spreadsheets that we compiled, we made some summary tables, and these are the general overall findings of the report in terms of field investigations. So for example, pavement conditions for the roadway. Again, this is for both study areas for the whole job. You can see how, things were ranked in terms of excellent, good, fair, poor. And in general, the pavement was okay. There was 6% that was in poor condition. But there was a varying range. Sidewalk and curbing, kind of similar stories, except sidewalk had a little more in the poor category, not as much excellent. And this takes into consideration things like, walking hazards, and, you know, not ADA compliant essentially. So if it wasn't ADA compliant, then it was either in a fair or poor category. Next slide, Liz. So then this is the summary tables for the infrastructure, the subsurface infrastructure. So for the drainage and sewer manhole condition tables on the left there, those are just for the structures themselves. So those were done by, you know, physical assessment, pop the covers, take a look at it, see if it's deteriorating, if there's inflow or what's going on with the structure itself. Generally okay for the age, you know, in good to fair condition. There are only a few, you know, 13% for drainage and 5% for sewer that's very poor or immediately failing. But then you get to the drainage, sewer, and water main infrastructure. So this is actually the pipelines themselves. And this was done a little bit differently because obviously you can't see all the piping. We did do some CCTVing for the sewer mains to identify some you know, physical conditions of the pipe itself. But the majority of this was based on age. And as you can probably tell, a lot of the infrastructure is very old. So that's why it's into the fair and poor categories. So, you know, that's kind of the process of what we looked at and what a summary of our findings were. Again, we have specific figures at the end. If there's specific questions, we can get into, you know, specific streets if you want. But, you know, we compiled all the infrastructure data. We talked to the town departments. You know, we had the public hearing to see if there was any other outreach or items that we didn't catch. We looked at projects already in the works, and then we looked at potential funding sources, and we kind of had all that stuff in mind to determine, you know, what are the priority projects, because obviously you can't fix everything in town. So we're trying to highlight, and we had a separate meeting with the town to figure out what are the priority projects, you know, and we ended up coming with, I believe it was 8 projects, 5 specific areas. And I'm going to turn it over to Liz, so Liz can go into those specific priority projects.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Yes. So first of all, just thank you, everyone, for letting us present tonight. And to those of you who are tuning in, it's been a pleasure working in town. I actually got to do a lot of the field survey. So I spent a good chunk of time in town this summer, getting to meet some of you. So we'll jump into some of the priority projects. And like Matt mentioned, these projects came to be, and we narrowed down the list in a final meeting with town staff and Andrew from Central Mass Planning Commission. And that resulted in 5 project areas to focus on. Those 5 project areas are shown here. The first one is the Oxford Ave area. Next is that Chestnut Green Oak West area. And there's actually 3 projects that we're going to talk about in that area. The Village Mill Ardlock area, which has 2 projects. And then we have the First Ave area and the Fairview Ave project. So once those projects were determined, we took a look and put together conceptual layouts and figures and estimated project costs for each of those projects. And that's what I'm going to take you through a little bit further next. And before we go into that, just to jump back a little bit, Matt had mentioned we rated every piece of infrastructure. Those ratings were put onto figures like the one here for each neighborhood, for each type of infrastructure. So we're looking right here at the water rating sheet for the Jericho neighborhood. And our green shows an excellent condition. A yellow would be a good condition, and orange is fair, and red is poor. So I'm going to bring your attention to the Oxford Ave area. That's going to be the first project area we talk about. And in this figure, you can see we're rating that current water line out there as a poor condition, and that is due both to age and the size of that water main. So with that, we'll move on to that first project, which is the Oxford Avenue project, which addresses the water concern, but also a little bit of the sewer concern. So right now, the two side streets, the sewer of the side streets enters the main line in Oxford Ave through a Y or T connection. So not manholes. So there's no way to access that sewer at those side streets for maintenance, cleaning, if there was an issue. So what the Oxford Ave project improvements will include will be a new water main, new hydrants, new services, and then a doghouse manhole at each of those sewer intersections of the side streets, and also all the associated surface restoration and repairs from the disturbance of that work. And down in the corner, I have a quick summary of the project costs, and the ones I'm going to focus on for the presentation tonight are the construction costs. So the approximate estimated construction cost for this Oxford Ave project would be around $880,000. And that is the one project for this area. And we'll move right next to Oxford Ave over to the Chestnut, Green, West, and Oak Street area. There will be 3 projects for this area. And we're first just going to take a look at those existing conditions again, at what the existing infrastructure is rated as. So for our water here, again, we're seeing that poor condition with this red rating. And then I'll have you take a look at the drainage infrastructure. So the drainage infrastructure that's out there is mostly in a fair condition, some poor, but we also have some drainage concerns where there's a lack of infrastructure and we're seeing some signs of erosion. And lastly is the sidewalks. So we see a fair and poor sidewalk rating in this area. And I would also like to note, we do have some evident walking hazards out here on the sidewalks where the sidewalk is no longer passable in some areas because of some obstructions that are in the way of the sidewalk. For example, there's a retaining wall that is blocking the sidewalk in an area. So the projects to address these, the first one we'll start out is a water project. And the water project based on, as Matt had mentioned before, we looked at funding sources and the limits of those funding sources and what what UMax could get potentially from one of them. And that's why we broke this into the 2 phases to fit under those funding guidelines. And the project in its entirety would address the water system through new water mains, new hydrants, new services, and again, that surface restoration of the disturbed areas. And for this, for each phase for the estimated construction cost, we're looking at $600,000. And you can see a little more of the breakdown there. And as we move on to the second project, it would be to address the drainage concerns. And we would see some new drainage lines, including catch basins and manholes with some down Green Street, which currently does not exist. And in addition to that, it would have to be some upgrading and new outlet locations down at the end of West and Green Street. And again, all the associated restoration costs for the surface repairs. And for that, the construction costs $870,000. And moving on to the last project for this area, which we do recommend be the last one because it does focus mostly on surface. So you're not going to want to do the surface restoration work first before digging everything up. So we do recommend this one be the third project in this area. And it would address the walkability concerns of this neighborhood through new and rehabilitated sidewalks and adding in some crosswalks and ADA compliant ramps, and along with signage for those crosswalks. And again, we have our cost breakdown right here, with our construction cost being around $530,000. And that is the last project. So that would be 3 for this neighborhood: a water, a drainage, and then the sidewalk improvements. And keep things rolling, we'll stay in the Jericho neighborhood, but moving down what I like to call the triangle of Village, Mill, and Ardlock. And in this figure, we're looking at the priority ratings of sewer. And in this triangle area, we see that poor condition of sewer. And this is definitely due to age, undersize, and also these sewer mains currently run through private properties under some basements. So there is a big concern of access to these mains. And then also the sidewalk. So we have a few areas that are evident walking hazards in this area, especially right here where we have a little red strip. That is right next to the mill building, and it's the sidewalk. You can't walk on the sidewalk there, and this is quite a busy, it can be a busy street. And then the sidewalk is not continuous down Village. The sidewalk kind of encourages pedestrian traffic down Ardlock, which has a lot of blind spots and not the safest street to be walking on. So those are the existing conditions for this little triangle area. And the 2 projects proposed for that area would be first the sewer project. That sewer project would focus on bringing the main lines of the sewer into the streets out of those private properties, tying that sewer into existing manholes in the Ardlock street strip here. And it would also include, besides the new sewer mains, services to the property lines and manholes, and then again, all that surface restoration and repair work. And we have our cost breakdown here. And also one thing we did include in the appendix or at the end of the presentation is a more detailed cost breakdown of each of these projects for everyone's reference too. So you can kind of see where these numbers are coming from. I just kind of gave you an overview here. And the other project for this area would be looking at that walkability of the area with, again, for sidewalks, some rehabilitated sidewalks, then also some proposed new sidewalks, crosswalks, and signage. And the signage out here would be a little bit more robust just because of the amount of traffic that is seen. And our estimated construction cost would be $340,000. And that is the last project for the Jericho neighborhood. And with that, we'll move over to the Brandon neighborhood. And this is the water figure, and I'll draw your attention. We're going to talk about first this First Ave area. Again, common theme, just because the water infrastructure in these areas is very old. We see the poor rating for the water, again, undersized here too. And then for sidewalk, there isn't any sidewalk currently down First Ave, a little bit right here by the pizza place, but and this is a highly populated residential area with a library here. We got some restaurants and stores down here, but no, currently no sidewalks. So to address that project, those concerns would be one First Ave project, which would address the water, the walkability. And then also we were able to CCTV part of this strip of sewer. The sewer manholes are actually paved over, so we were only able to do the end section. But from that, we were able to see there were a few areas that needed sewer repair, so that would also be addressed. So I guess in summary, for the First Ave project, the proposed improvements would include new water main, new services. For this cost, we looked at trying to protect those existing hydrants that are out there, and then new sidewalks, crosswalks, raising the manhole covers so that they will be accessible in the future for maintenance or inspection, and then the 2 sewer repairs. And that is all in the one project for First Ave, since it is a shorter street there. And all right, if you're still with me, the last project area we got is Fairview Ave. And as you can see right here, red condition for our water. And as some of you might be aware, there have been some recent water main breaks out in that area, which kind of brought this project up as even a little bit higher of a priority. So to include it on this in these priority projects. And additionally, while we're looking at that area, there's a lot of reoccurring drainage concerns, especially at the base of Warsaw, where the water pools and there's been icing and freeze over that results in ice during the winter and some flooding of front yards and such. So the proposed project for that area would address both the water and the drainage through a new water main, new services, again, trying to protect those hydrants that are already out there. And then for the drainage, new drainage line, catch basins, drainage manholes with an outlet in one project there. And that the construction estimated cost there is $725,000. And that is the last project for the priority projects that we looked at. So in review, there are 5 project areas for a total of 8 projects. We have the Oxford Ave with the One Water project, the Chestnut Green, Oak, and West area with the water project, the drainage project, and then the sidewalk project. And then the Village Mill Ardlock area with originally the sewer, then the sidewalk. The First Ave addressing mostly the water and sidewalk, and then the Fairview Ave project addressing the water and the drainage. And so these are the initial priority projects that are proposed based on multiple factors that Matt had mentioned before to help guide and help the town plan in acquiring potential funding through grant programs and to actually apply for those grants for these infrastructure improvements. But the entire master plan can be used beyond these projects to come up with or plan for future projects beyond these 5. So I think that's all we have. I know that was a lot of information. So I think if we have time for questions or
Thank you for
comments.
that. That was very informative. Appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Certainly, Mr. Sullivan.
I want to thank the people that did the presentation, very informative. That was my neighborhood for about 25 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the drainage issue, the accessibility issues.
Mhm.
The pictures bring back memories. One of my questions over on Oxford Ave, and George can probably fill in the gaps if my memory is fading. But a couple years ago, they brought the water line down from Oxford, made the left turn down Cemetery Road, went under the North Main Bridge. And they did do some test drilling further down Oxford Ave, they were talking at one point about running the water line straight. And I don't, excuse me, like I said, George can probably help me. George, does the water line now, does it reach the Boys and Girls Club in that next business going up Oxford Ave, or will this new project capture that area?
That water line right now is a 6-inch water line. It's AC pipe it goes past the Boys and Girls Club and goes up Sunnyside, and that's where it ends, up Sunnyside. It doesn't go any further than Sunnyside.
Right.
I was always been in touch with Dickie Andelevich to see if he'd be interested in running a new main out there and even out to his area if he wants to put an industrial park someday out there. And there's always interest in that. But that didn't make the demographic area of this study. And I brought that up to see if we could go as far as the Boys and Girls Club or something where we might be able to carry it on further after that. So there's still things in the works right now for that. Go ahead.
No, so that existing 6-inch will be potentially replaced with a bigger one, even if it doesn't continue all the way up Oxford Ave. Because I thought when they came from Oxford, I thought, I'm not a technical person, I thought they put like a Y there with a nub on it that would potentially hook up a future industrial park. I thought that was always the plan. And then they ended up going left down Cemetery with the actual water itself. I guess what I'm getting at is we did the best we could the last time with Oxford. I just want to make sure we're doing the best we can planning for the future.
Yeah, I've been really hot and heavy and trying to get it even to continue the 12-inch out there that stops at Pine and Oxford Ave.
Right.
Increase the size of Oxford Ave to at least an 8-inch, but keep a trunk line going out that way. And that's always been our goal to try to do that. So we're going to see what this project ends up doing. If anything assists us in that, we'll see if we can even carry it further. Like I said, I know Dickie's been very adamant about trying to get something out his way, and I'd like to get Sunnyside all reconstructed with a new 8-inch main out there, so we don't have any more main breaks out that way. So
Right.
there's a lot in the works there to try to improve that whole area.
Right. And then my other question towards Liz's presentation about the little jog in the middle that kind of disrupts the flow of the sidewalk. We had people come in, maybe a couple of years ago, Mr. Ruda, when Camden Mills was first starting to come forward with their project, and people wanted to know if we could shift the road to make the sidewalk be continuous. That's something we can't fix that issue, right? We can't shift it over there. I know there's a mill across the street, the dog place, there's a telephone pole. You got the old bridge right there too. So I know Liz talked about it specifically. There's not much we can do to correct that, right?
So we have Bill, our planner, is on as well, and he specifically is working with the planning board on the Complete Streets grant program, which would address concerns like that, and they would address them. Hopefully, not hopefully, they would certainly address them, with the premise in mind that mill may be redeveloped. So this is more of the meat and potatoes of the infrastructure in that area. These are the things that you're always going to need drainage, and you're always going to need, to repair the issues that are identified here, no matter what the street or the pedestrian layout looks like. But that's another moving part in this whole project, the Complete Streets program that Bill is working very hard with the planning board on. So a long way to answer your question. A long way to a short answer is yes, we can look at it, but not through this specific grant. But we are looking at it through other sources of grant funding.
Right. I just those are two things off the top of my head. I remember we had big discussion, especially that Oxford Ave stretch in there, to somehow figure that out. And I know folks came before us, and we obviously know that mill's been there 1865, I think the stone says. So I just know those are going to be choke points, and I'm sure people are already definitely focusing in on the triangle section, as Liz put it so nicely. But the other one, I just would like to, I know George said it doesn't fit the demographics, but hopefully we get long-range planning or thought. I know we will. I have confidence. That was my two concerns. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Scanlon.
Yeah, thank you. To follow up on John's comment, we have been working with the bridge program of Ty and Bond to prepare a grant application under the small bridge program for that bridge that comes out of Low Pond and goes under the Stevens Mill. So that's a program that would enable us to repair and replace that bridge. And if, as John mentioned, if we could combine that bridge project with a complete streets project, we might be able to swing that road around a little bit and redesign the culvert under the road to take care of that sidewalk problem by the mill.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions, comments?
Mr.
I did
Chairman?
have,
Yes, Mr. Marcy.
Oh, sorry, Bill, you had something else? Go ahead.
well, I just,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
that's okay. I did want to thank Matt and Liz and their team for doing a very comprehensive job on this study. And I think what it shows is that there's a lot of bad news here in this report in terms of the town's infrastructure in these neighborhoods. And I think that there's a lot of ticking time bombs here, and George probably can speak to that in terms of broken mains and having to go out in the middle of the night and fix a lot of infrastructure that breaks at, the wrong time. So I would hope that we could use this study as a way to start talking about sort of an infrastructure funding program of some sort. And I don't know what that would look like, but I think there's got to be a way to start tackling some of these issues that if we don't take a proactive approach to replacing a lot of this deficient infrastructure, it's going to come back and really cause some significant problems later on. So I just like to try to plant a seed to see if we couldn't come up with a long-range funding program to tackle these in a systematic manner.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you to the team that put this together. A lot of information, and I would just hope that similar to the way they graded the projects, we focus on risk first, obviously, and after that, we, aesthetics might be farther down the line. Do the emergency work first. So, thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman?
Johnson. Yes, Mr. Marcy.
Yeah, just, I remember seeing you guys walk up the Fairview Ave, which is right here. And this is my neighborhood. and I see some of the things that do happen. This was very, very detailed. I want to thank all of you guys for putting this together. I mean, residents that are watching this will be able to see very clearly, like to Bill's point, that there's a lot of bad news here, and we need to pursue every avenue from a grant standpoint, from for these sources of funding to prioritize these as needed. So this was eye-opening. I mean, not surprising, but eye-opening. But these are some of the the more the areas that need it the most in Dudley. So let's, to Mr. Johnson's point, let's prioritize and get going. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marcy. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just one thing to follow up on.
Yes.
So just I appreciate all the information here and all the work that's been done, and Bill's feedback was very good as well. Just focusing on what Mr. Sullivan was asking about that area around the mill and everything there. So if just to clarify, what work would be done on sidewalks at this time under this project? I might have just been a little confused on what was going to be replaced, what was going to be done. So I understand the whole thing with the road shifting and there's major work that's going to be done, but I didn't know what the temporary solution was. I was just having a hard time trying to just figure out what's going to happen at this point.
Yeah, sure. Liz, you want to pull up that figure?
And can I jump in just for a second, Matt?
Yep.
So what the current grant has had funding for is this study. So at the moment, there's no funding to go out and do a final design or construction of any of these projects. So the plan is really intended to be a tool to help us go out and get those funds. But right now, you're looking at what's been funded so far. So I look forward to sitting down with George and Bill and other folks in town. This is kind of a jigsaw puzzle to figure out which funding sources line up best with which potential projects out there. But it is going to be a multi-year process to go out and try to implement all these projects. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just wondering what the proposal was. I just was having a hard time figuring out exactly what the basic proposal was at this point.
Yeah, so for this one right now, we're not proposing any shifting of the road or anything like that. This would just be purely sidewalk improvements. So there would be a crosswalk installed basically where the mill is, so you get into the building, and that the cross or the sidewalk that is in front of the building now would be removed, where it goes to that pinch point, and basically be flip-flopped to the other side of Mill Street to the top there, where there would be signals to get across back the road. So that's what we're planning now. Again, there may be better designs out there when you actually get into it, but for now, just based on the pinch point with that building, it's kind of flip-flopping the sidewalk to the other side of the road with some crosswalks.
All right, very good. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Ruda.
So just to, as Mr. Johnson said, Andrew just touched on it. This is a stepping off point. This is getting closer to a shovel-ready project that we can request, additional CDBG type loans, not loans, grants to make these repairs. But without knowing what our priorities were and knowing what the condition of the roadways were and the infrastructure, we couldn't move we couldn't move further. So the whole strategy behind this step is to move on to the next step, which is to seek, construction funding through grants. And these two areas were qualifying in town, and I think that they line up with the CDBG grant program. And I think we also have the opportunity, now that we have this, these priorities set out and this survey completed, we now have the opportunity, as Bill said, to take this to a MassWorks or a Complete Streets. Not only this, but the Camden proposal, or whatever may come down the road, and find a project that'll work and prioritize those areas that are not necessarily going to qualify for Complete Streets funding, or we wouldn't want to use towards Complete Streets funding because we have CDBG funds for that. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but we don't move any further unless we go down the road of step-by-step, A through Z, going through what we need to repair and replace, what it's going to cost, what the best qualifying source of revenue would be for us, source of funding would be for that, and to kind of put together a package and then kind of systematically go after these different grant programs. It's completely doable. We're not reinventing the wheel here, but we've made hallmark progress just in this study alone, I think, in that area. And then,
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question for Matt. Did we get any feedback on the public posting? Did any members of the public submit any written questions or comments about the presentation in advance? Did anybody have any questions about it?
I have not received anything. I don't know. Andrew, did you receive anything either?
Not yet. I expect, though, as I said, when the draft plan goes out onto the town's website, we'll definitely put our contact information on there. And if folks, in the town staff or on the board have questions they want to put in, having reviewed the plan, or if folks at home want to do the same, we would certainly be happy to communicate with anybody.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
I see the highway superintendent's on. I know he's new to town and some of this stuff. Is there any questions out of the highway going forward? Is Jeff right there?
Sure, yeah. I don't think I have any questions right now. I understand the process. Right now it's pretty much designed as the process, and it seems like infrastructure is of great concern right now. And then, sidewalk, streetscaping, and the paving improvements as well would would be secondary to that, I guess. So I think there's a little bit of time, a little bit of work that still needs to be done from what I understand as far as funding to support the projects. And I think, as was kind of said before, that, some of the infrastructure would probably be the priority, and then, hopefully the funds would be available to do the streetscaping as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Anyone else have anything?
Fantastic presentation.
Yes, it was. It certainly was fantastic. It wasn't just this is bad, it's this is, and then how bad it is. And it was specific. That's a good thing.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
And here's the plan, right? If we get funding. So there's a path forward, like Mr. Ruda said.
Well, we will get funding with Mr. Massey. It's just, we're moving in the right direction. There's no-
Fantastic.
That's just good all the way around. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, do we have to motion to accept the presentation or anything, or is it just strictly informational?
Mr. Ruda? Was
No,
that just information, or should we vote to accept it?
we don't have to accept it. This is just a presentation to the board. If you want to vote to accept it, I encourage you to do so. It kind of codifies the plan to move forward.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second,
Motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Joe Marcy, aye.
Ian Sullivan, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
Gary Siganovich, aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much for
Liz
that
did a
presentation.
fantastic job. Andrew and Matt, good enough, I guess. But thanks anyways. Thanks for coming.
All right. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. Thanks again.
Folks,
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda, we have Jeffrey Murray, Highway Superintendent, discussion regarding property owners' placement of landscape features within the town's layout. Mr. Murray.
Okay, so a couple of things. In going around town and dealing with some of the issues that we have to deal with, it seems like, there's property owners that have placed landscaping features within the layout of the roadway. Whether it be stone walls or other type of features where there are landscape style features that are placed there. And in doing so, they're kind of doing that at their own risk. And I wanted to bring that to the attention of the board, because they are the highway commissioners. And I think in light of that, we want to be responsible for what the typical treatment would be on the edge of the road or within the highway, the street layout. So the typical would be some form of stabilization, like loam seed. That would be the most common. So if we start to see any other type of features where if there's damage done to that, the homeowners know that they're placing those things there at their own risk. And we certainly don't want the town to be incurring costs associated with replacing those items. So basically along those lines too, one of the other things that kind of falls into play with that is the highway or the driveway permit process that the highway department deals with. And I know the applications are done through the town hall, and currently there really isn't a great deal of detail as far as the expectation. It says that 15 feet, the first 15 feet is required to be paved. But when I've gone to take a look at some of the driveways to sign off on them, it seems like a proper apron isn't being developed. So the driveway comes relatively flat out to the edge of the road. There should be an apron at the approach to the driveway. The planning board documents for a new subdivision actually show a little bit more detail, but it's difficult to read. at best because of the printing and the job. The dimensioning and the detailing as far as the lettering and the detailing is very difficult to read. So I wanted to propose that I make a little bit of an update to that and add that to the permit process for the driveways that calls for a 2-inch binder course, 2 inches of top, and a 12-inch gravel base. And, you know, a lot of times with the several driveways that I have gone to take a look at, the builders, and it is typical with a builder that they only own giving a base course of paving to the homeowner. I think it should be incorporated in there that apron with the top and base course back to the property line or the street layout line is something that we should probably put into the permit request. So I don't, do any of the board members have any questions about any of those things?
Yeah, just a quick one, Jeff. So you're saying you want 12-inch gravel, 2-inch, like a binder course, and a 2-inch base on the apron?
Well, like I said, if you look in the planning documents for a new subdivision,
Yeah,
it actually shows a detail that's basically showing this. It shows a driveway apron, which extends from the edge of the paved roadway back to the town's property line, or the rear of the sidewalk, which oftentimes matches each other. But what it does is it causes the water to stay on the road. I actually I had a detail sketch that I kind of put together, and I was unable to upload in this. I'm actually using my iPhone for the Zoom meeting right now. I was unable to sign into the Outlook account on my own personal laptop, and I actually inadvertently left my iPad at the office earlier today. So, but I can email or forward copies to the individual board members so they can take a look at it. And I think it'd be a wise thing to do and incorporate into the permit. Like I said, it's pretty much a standard in the industry that you would do something like that, and it just seems like it makes good sense because what happens if the water doesn't stay on the edge along the curb line or reach the catch basins and it enters the property through the driveway? If we have a garage that is down gradient from the roadway, it's a potential problem with a homeowner that, town would be responsible for the runoff going into their property, or, having a wet basement potentially, or even, any types of issues like that. And it is, I have seen in viewing at least one of the new subdivisions that is up for review for street acceptance this spring, or potentially at the annual town meeting. There appear to be issues with the lack of having an appropriate apron on the edge of the road to maintain the water on the roadway.
right. And Mr. Chair, maybe Bill can touch on this too, but I seem to recall from my time on the planning board, the regs there's no descending standard in our regs, but we have ascending standards, right? Because you don't want someone coming down a driveway that can't stop. So if the descending driveway is, like you said, Jeff, below the road, it could cause an issue with the way the water runs. Sometimes it can be inadvertently funneled, like you said, it'll end up in somebody's yard or garage. So I think it makes a lot of sense I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. We have no descending standard, but an ascending. So I think that's a good place to start. I'd like to see that move quickly through the process.
Through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Ruda.
So Jeff, if you could provide for the next meeting, the industry standard that we would that you'd be asking the selectmen to vote on adopting, that would be a step in the right direction.
Sure. And again, I was trying to see if I could share what I have from my phone, and I was having some difficulty to do that. But again, I can email copies over to the individual board members in advance of the next meeting, so they get a chance to take a look at it. It pretty much shows what's the industry standard and dimensioned, and it actually shows an ascending as well as a descending standard. So, you do want to create that berm. I know the planning documents show, a maximum grade on an ascending driveway right now, but it doesn't show a maximum on a descending driveway.
Right, that's the point I was trying to make before. I
Yeah.
seem to recall it's not in there, because we had the problem with the house on Center Road. It was a pretty steep ascending, and I think they made the guy crown the top a little bit to try to prevent any kind of accident coming down, not being able to stop. It was a
Okay.
long time ago. I've been on the planning board for a long time.
Okay. And then,
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time chasing, we have spent a lot of time chasing these issues that I think that if we moved in the direction that Jeff is proposing and adopting the best practice, the industry standard towards, a driveway permit, what the actual requirements are. I know he's spoken with Bill a little bit. I think that will actually make things run smoothly in general, from our office down to the highway department. I think Michelle can agree with that too.
okay, and in getting back to the landscape features within the roadway layout as well. I don't know if any of the board members had any questions as far as that's concerned as well, or if if there was an understanding of what I was talking about with that. I think if you take a ride around town, you can see in some areas there, homeowners have encroached because they see behind the curb line. There's some green space, and especially in some of the new subdivisions, again, that the town will be looking at laying out at the next annual meeting. Some of those roadways with a 50-foot layout, the lawn areas can extend back 11, 12, 13 feet from the curb line. So typically, if a homeowner sees that area as being green, they assume that's their property, and sometimes they place different landscape features in there. Irrigation systems can be problematic. So if we go to do some work, if there's some resurfacing in the future, and curb lines move, or there's some disturbance to those areas that are actually town owned, and then there's homeowner placed features that are placed in there, we certainly don't want to become responsible for those. So my suggestion would be to come up with some way for the highway commissioners to communicate that if this type of thing is done, it's done at the homeowner or property owner's risk.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I just ask if Jeff could provide some simple visual aids for the homeowners to see what kind of expectations are in the regs. Sometimes those read a little dry, so having some visual aids that show some examples would be probably appropriate.
Agreed. It's kind of hard to say to people, hey, something in your front yard might not be good. We're not sure how far it is. Could be this much, could be that much. Be careful where you put your irrigation system. Like Mr. Johnson said, some concrete things to go by. Something that someone can hold in their hand and look at. That'd be great.
Sure. And, I can certainly do that, but, there's a wide variety of different things that would come into play, if you can understand what I'm saying. I mean, there's, people place, they may decide to place brick pavers along the edge of the roadway. Or they may be, again, an irrigation system that is impacted by some road work that may be done, and then the town becomes responsible for replacing that stuff if that isn't properly communicated. But I can certainly come up with some visual aids to communicate that. And again, it varies depending on the area. It varies what that street layout dimension is. A lot of the existing roads, it may be 5 feet. And again, some of the newer roadways where there's a 50-foot layout on the road with, if there's a 24-foot paved course, there could be 13 feet of green area that's actually town owned. So I'll certainly put something together for you.
Right, but Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
I think Jeff hit the nail on the head. I think if you ever look at some of the older maps back in the day, county layouts, some of the roads were 30-foot wide taking, some were 40. And again, Bill can probably help me along here. I think the way the bylaws are written now, new subdivision's supposed to be 50 total, because you're supposed to be able to fit the roadway in, grass strip, sidewalk with a little grass on the other side of the sidewalk, although the planning board has, as Jeff just said, it could be 24-foot wide road, could be 26. They have the right to waive that configuration, because I think it was only a few years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, some of the board members that have been on, didn't we have the issue with the guy up off of Mason Road Extension, Sunrise Shores there? He'd kind of through the years had encroached his lawn out to the road, so he tried to make the right-hand turn. I don't think they did it deliberately, just the road, just the soil, everything just kind of eventually came out, and it kind of created a tougher area for the plows to get in and things like that. But I'd be interested to see what Jeff comes up with. I think Jay Johnson had a good suggestion. Give us like a visual, give us an idea. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. You don't want to, as Jeff said, damage somebody's stuff inadvertently.
Okay. I don't know if anybody else had any other comments related to that or questions. Okay, and one last thing, the board
Judge,
had.
did you have something? No? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So the board had asked me as well again, and I just had a couple of PowerPoint slides that I had put together as far as paving for the spring. So the materials and services bids were actually opened last week, and looks like Amarillo, AF Amarillo was the low bidder on the paving contract. So some of looks like there's about 14 streets that had been earmarked for paving. A couple of them had been prepared during the last season with some shimming of the roadways and berm that had been put in place. Looks like three of the roads that would be ready to get going first thing in the spring would be Eagle Drive, Rocky Road, and Lower Perryville Road. And from there, there's some work on New Boston Road with an undetermined amount of paving at this time, but the other several roads would be Corbin Road, Dudley Oxford Road, West Dudley Road in 3 different sections, Baker Pond Road, William Street, James Street, Hill Court, and Love Court. And the total for the Chapter 90 funds that remain are $430,679, and supposed to be meeting with representative from Amarillo potentially sometime this week if providing the weather's desirable enough, and we'd be taking a look at some of those things to get those projects going first thing in the spring. So,
Anyone have any other questions? None? Thank you very much, Jeff.
okay, thanks.
Next on the agenda, we have old business, which we have none. Next on the agenda, we have board members' comments. Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, I just want to send out kudos. One massive storm, long duration, and the one yesterday was probably a frustrating storm. But once the guys got a jump on it, once again, did a good job. Roads cleaned up nice. Didn't get any negative feedback, so that usually means it's positive because nobody ever calls or texts and says great job. So just want to send out kudos to Jeff and his staff, and also to the fire and EMS and the police. I know you guys have been awfully busy lately. And again, you don't have any negative feedback, so you assume everything's doing well. So thank you all. And hopefully we get out of this little rut we're in after this week with the storms every 2 or 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Johnson.
I'll echo what Mr. Sullivan said. We live in New England. Snow comes down, we got to pick it up. Put sand down, got to pick it up. And it's a cycle that has to happen. Town did Jeff, you guys did a great job. Looks good out there. So thank you, and spring's around the corner.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Marcy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, echoed, same thing, no complaints. Jeff, keep it up. I know it's your first winter in the role, so that I know you have the team doing a great job, so thanks. Also, I just wanted to circle back on some of the stuff that we had in the prior meetings about the PFAS and a potential water bottle program or reimbursement of water bottles. George, have the commissioners talked to you any more about that, or is that something still in the works? Because I know that the school has begun passing out water bottles. I know the middle school has done that. I've heard that from several residents. I want to make sure that other people who don't have children in the school can at least have that option.
Yeah, the board's been looking at that right now. There's nothing definite right at this moment. I'll probably get more information next meeting we have coming up first week of March.
Awesome. Thank you, George. Appreciate that. Just something I just want to make sure that we're on top of, and we've listened to people that who are concerned. Yeah, George, while I have you, just saw some other things about the brown water earlier. You may be covering that in your report based on something that was happening today. Are you going to cover that after?
I could just say it now if it's okay.
Okay.
With you.
No, go right ahead.
As long as you skip me after. There was a fire down at Shields Packaging today, and one of the Connex boxes took some amounts of water, and we have a line that goes in there, and that line being used all of a sudden after all this time. And it's, by the way, that's private property. They don't really service very well in there or use the hydrants too often, but when they do, it stirs up the water and it affects the Jericho area a little bit. So there were some calls today. I was at the fire, so I didn't get the message till I got back to the station. But my advice to everybody in that area, if you do have brown water, let it run for about 10 or 15 minutes, even out of the back faucet would be fine. If you still have a problem, then don't hesitate to call the water department and somebody will come out there and assist you. It happens quite a lot whenever we have a big incident with a lot of uses of water, just an antiquated system out there. But sooner or later, things will improve, and hopefully we won't have that kind of problem occur very often. The other thing is, I just like to ask everybody who has a hydrant in front of their home, please feel free to shovel it. Right now, with these storms coming upon us every couple of days, the windrows are going to get bigger and bigger, and it's going to affect the hydrants. And we'll do what we can to get out there and try to shovel or plow the hydrants out. But if the public can help us in that matter, it's a great thing as far as emergencies for the fire department to get access to the hydrants. whatever, it's going to be a great help. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I'll keep my comments brief. Stay safe, everyone. We're almost there. Just keep staying safe. Departmental communications, Mr. Carmignani, do you have anything?
Absolutely.
There
I
we go.
smile. We've got not one, but two new vehicles. George has a new water truck. Jeff has a new loader. I know George is driving the truck. Jeff's probably only played with the loader a little bit, but we have plates on those and we're ready to go. Remember, we bought the loader with chapter money. We borrowed money in anticipation of the governmental receipt. So if anyone were asking why we still have money in the account for chapter 90, that's all very item specific. One of the items, that's probably the last thing that that Vinnie Paletta did, was made sure that we got the authorization for the wheel loader so we could go through and do all the paving projects. He wanted to make sure that that was done. So that's probably why we got that done. Also, we've been working with the people from Ty and Bond, not the Ty and Bond people that were here tonight, but Jeff Faulkner and the people who were doing the PFAS, the station upgrades and what have you. As much as there's an engineering portion, the SRF has its own questionnaires and compliance. So all of the things we did to get the green light letter were good, and we need to almost repeat those again for the application. This is for the 6.8, 13.2, all of the interest forgiveness loans. That's a good thing. The bills are at the printers right now to be sorted, folded, and mailed in the event. They should hit the mail over the weekend. If you have water sewer service and you don't have a bill by, let's say, February 22nd, reach out. We'll make sure that we print it. More importantly, if you have a vehicle, anything with a plate on it, there should be an excise coming to you. Please let us know anytime beyond maybe the 22nd. Remember, an excise bill is not public information. There's a federal stalking law and stuff like that. At the end of the day, everybody here is very friendly. If we call up and I hear from John Marcy, Rich, I misplaced my bill, we'll be happy to reprint it. No problem. Happy to get it at the kiosk or leave it at the police department for you. Along those lines, we have some troopers. The other morning, it was snowy, and Zach Canoyer was out there with his shovel, making his own little path. It warmed his mother's heart to hear that because I spoke with Jen today. So you have some real troopers who are out there, the Board of Health assistants who are lending a hand. They're going above and beyond. I know everybody says that, but again, always worth saying when they give a little bit extra, especially on a snowy day. One more good thing, the vote was taken, I believe, last week. Health insurance goes down by 2%. It's not a lot, but if you have a $100,000 bill going out every month, that's a couple of dollars. So we're moving in the right direction. Beyond that, we're hunkering down for the busiest month or so during the year. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmignani. Next up, we have Jeff. You're a departmental head. Do you have anything?
So just the last thing, I know it was commented, I appreciate the praise for the job that the employees have done with as far as clearing the streets. In the past several weeks, we've had some storms to contend with. And actually we have in the big storm, I did get several either emails or calls with some praise for the employees, saying that it was a job well done. Also, although only a handful, I have gotten calls from residents with some some service complaints or a miss or a skip. And I would encourage residents to call the highway department. The phone actually rings at the highway department and on my cell phone at the same time. So if anybody has some concerns about, if there was some potentially a service that was missed near their property or on their street, we certainly want to know about that because we don't know what we don't know. So if rather than hear a complaint at a later date, I'd rather hear about it firsthand and have an opportunity to take care of those. So that's about it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jeff. And on a personal note, thank you for letting my mailbox stand after this storm. I appreciate it. We're on the right track. But
Okay.
Next, Fire Chief Dean, do you have anything, sir?
Yeah, I got a couple quick things. We had 2 of our full-timers graduate the full-time recruit program on last Friday. Paul Latino and Dan Shan. They both did excellent, and Daniel Shan actually received the Richard Bangs Award for Most Outstanding Recruit, finished #1 in the class, so that's really good. So I'm very proud of them and very happy that that's over with. They did a hybrid system where they did all the classroom on Zoom and all the practical application was at the Academy in Springfield. On another note, I'd like to thank the highway department for their help today at the dumpster fire. We couldn't get Pratt to come out with a truck to empty the compactor, so they came out with the loader and helped us out. Cut down the scene time quite a bit, and it's much appreciated. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Chief. Steve, do you have anything, Police Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, just a couple of things. First of all, thanks to the kudos for the work everybody's doing, because definitely is a challenging time. Certainly had the fun of the winter time, but we've also had our share of people out and about with the COVID situation, both from either exposures or infections or whatever it is. So that's been holding us back for a few weeks here, and probably will be going for a little bit longer. But we're getting through it all there. Storms are going to be a challenge. Certainly kudos to the fire chief and his crew, and definitely Jeff and his crew for all the work they're doing. So 2 things we can ask is make sure that people pay attention to the parking bans. We're trying to get those out as soon as we can to get those out to people. In fact, I'm not sure. I'll probably just kind of put them on a spot probably, but I don't know if Jeff wants to do one for this evening or for tomorrow or anything like that or not. But make sure people pay attention to the parking bans. We've been out there trying to assist people with moving vehicles and getting them off the roads during the times when they're plowing. So the more they can move those vehicles, the better off they are. And also, it's going to be very important to clear off your sidewalks. I believe it's Article 8 of our bylaws requires property owners to clear the sidewalks in front of their respective homes or businesses. We had a pretty easy January, so we didn't have much of a problem. But certainly we have back-to-back storms now, and that stuff can really pile up. When it changes to ice and everything too underneath, it's going to really be a challenge. So we're just encouraging people to get out and make sure they clear that off as they're doing their walkways and driveways as it goes through. We did work out with the National Honor Society at the high school. So if there are individuals who are disabled, elderly, or that are unable to do that, they will come out and clear the sidewalk for you. So it's a service that they're offering as a community project through the National Honor Society. So I'll get a posting up with some contact information on that. I believe it's Henry at the office up there at the school, 774-239-0464. So it's 774-239-0464. That'll be the number to call if anybody wants to set up that type of service. And unless there's any other questions, I'll go from there.
Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate it. George, you ready for a second go around?
No, I'm good. I think I covered everything.
You're good? Well,
Yeah.
while I've got you, I want to ask you to do something on an official. I consider this an official request. We've gotten a lot of calls and a lot of texts and a lot of emails. People are coming to the Board of Selectmen about the water issues. They're coming to us looking, because the school's doing it, they're looking from us for water bottles. Could you ask your commissioners to come to whatever the decision is, could they make a decision and publicly release it? Because I mean, it makes no sense for me to keep getting the calls and the texts, and I don't have the answer. That's not in my circle of influence. We all know the water sewer commissioners handle the water. They're independently elected. That's their gig. Could you ask them to do whatever they're gonna do, fine, just do it and make it public, please?
Yeah, well, the call should be coming to the water sewer. I don't know why they're bothering the selectmen regarding this, because other information can be handled differently too. But we've talked about it. The board's talked about it. I can see if I can get something, maybe on a definitive, something to the public. But I just encourage them to call the water sewer and let us see what we can do or whatever, because it's not fair to call you. You can't handle anything in that realm. It's not productive that way either. So,
but until they get the information, they're going to stop me in the produce aisle at Park and Shop. And I know these people. I'm not going to just walk by them. I'm not going to run away from them. I've got to sit there and listen. And it pains me that there's nothing that I can say to solve their problem. Like I said, you guys do what you do. Just please, I'm just asking as a favor, request, whatever you want to call it. Whatever it is you do, could you just ask them to put it on a piece of paper and let's release it? And then have it on that piece of paper. If you have any questions, concerns, input, whatever, call us.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right.
Yeah, George, I would reiterate it, say the same thing. Because the people look at it as a town issue, not just water sewer, selectmen, right? That's why we hear about it. So I know you guys are working on it, but yeah, it's coming up a lot.
We'll see if we can get something out to the public. I'll notify them.
Thanks, George.
Greatly appreciate that, George. Thank you
so
very
much.
much. I know you got a lot on your plate. I hate to add more, but this is kind of important. Let me pull up the agenda here. Did I get everybody? Yes, I did. So we're now down to the.
Mr. Chairman, just one follow-up.
Oh, certainly.
Just had a conversation with the highway superintendent. So we'll be putting an announcement up, but they'll put the parking ban on tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So just wanted to make that announcement. So that'll be going out to the media and then on social media and everything. So 7 a to 7 p tomorrow, parking ban.
That's what I like, information out to the public. That's great. Thank you very much.
I can rave it, Steve.
Yeah, I'll send it out very shortly to the usual crew there. So.
Chief, Fire Chief, just use the same language from the last time. It's short and sweet, if you could.
We're all good? Colin, what do you have, sir? What's going on at Shepherd Hill? What's the news? What's the scores? What's happening?
All right. So first of all, I just want to say we've obviously, like everybody, we've had some snow in the last week. So we have two different types of weather days this year. We have the traditional snow day, and then we have a full remote day where we do all of our classes online. Last Monday we did a full remote day, and last Tuesday we had a traditional snow day. Both went pretty smoothly. Tomorrow is a full remote day due to the snow that's coming in tomorrow. That's already been announced. So hopefully the snow is almost done. But term 2 report cards were released on our community portal on Friday, January 29th. There are a lot of students on the honor roll and many received high grades. A number of student awards have gone out recently. We have senior Michaela Cluet recently received the 2020-2021 Principals Leadership Award. Seniors Serena Vayu and Henry Weiland received the 2020 and 2021 Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Superintendent Certificate of Academic Excellence Award. And Senior Cutter Beck was named the 2021 representative for the General Ebenezer Learned Daughters of the American Revolution chapter of Oxford. Spirit Week is being held at Shepherd Hill this week. Class Color Day is being held Monday for Cohort A and Thursday for Cohort B. And School Color Day is being held Tuesday for Cohort A and Friday for cohort B. The student council has been very busy lately. They recently sold Valentine's carnations, and they are hosting a drive-in movie night this Friday where they will be showing The Greatest Showman and The Hunger Games. A number of clubs have gotten up and running virtually this year, including A Better Hill, which I spoke about at the last meeting, as well as the Comic Book Club and the Drama Club. I spoke to a student who has been involved with clubs and other extracurriculars, and she told me that she has found it difficult with the technical glitches and the different times that the clubs have been meeting. The Drama Club will be hosting auditions for their virtual spring performance, The Show Must Go On over Zoom, which is a trio of hilarious works written by our own students, Ashley Harvey, Jacqueline Morrison, Natalie Sabo, and Kevin Lauder. We are all looking forward to seeing the Drama Club back up and running. Led by foreign language teacher Raymond Kane, the Shepherd Hill staff recently sponsored a meal at the Mustard Seed in Worcester. Staff members donated desserts and donations, and a small group made homemade chicken and broccoli Alfredo, so a very generous thing that our staff members did. The music department is beginning jazz band, winter percussion, and winter color guard. Those groups will be meeting in person once a week while practicing social distancing protocols. So as we begin to work through the second half of the year, many clubs and activities have begun to ramp up, while making the appropriate modifications to keep everyone safe. In the next few weeks, we will begin to talk about the new hybrid model starting on March 15th and fall 2 and spring athletics. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you very much, Colin. We've reached the end of our agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to reconvene into executive session.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Ruda.
so what we should do is just disconnect, and I'm going to, as soon as we're off, I'm going to send out another invitation for exec.
Motion, all
great.
right.
Do you have to read the disclaimer?
You do. I have it in front of me. If no one else does, I'll make the motion.
I can do it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
Rossi.
I move that we convene into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A4, to discuss the deployment of or strategy regarding security personnel or devices, e.g. network/IT security, and not to reconvene in public session.
Second. Motion and a second. Roll call vote.
John Marcy, aye.
Jay Johnson, aye.
D. Sullivan, aye.
Gary Siganovich, aye, unanimous.